Hello, welcome everyone to my Nextjs series tutorial. In this tutorial, we are gonna build a small Nextjs app. And I want to show you in this video the basics of Nextjs. First of all, let's have a look at the Nextjs webpage. So this is the Nextjs website, and currently the most recent version is 9.4, which comes with a lot of good features. And before we start, I want to mention that I'm not gonna explain the basics of React and basics of ECMAScript 6 in this tutorial, because here I just want to focus on the Nextjs framework only. And the reason why you pick Next is probably the server-side rendering of React application. By the way, you also, in recent version of Next, I think from the 9, you can use Next as a static site generator. So before we continue, I want to show the project, the final project that we will build in these tutorials. This is the GitHub repos. I name it GitHub repos, and integrated here the GitHub API. So here we can show any GitHub repo. You can also filter the language here. For example, let's pick TypeScript. Then you can see a list of all GitHub repos that has somewhere in the description or in the name React board, and also its main language is TypeScript. Then you can click on the repo and see more detailed information. Then you can have the button here, View on GitHub, and if you click here, it opens just the GitHub page of this repo. The project is really small and can be, I think, finished in 30 minutes. With the design, I use Bulma CSS and Sass. At the GitHub API, I use, instead of a backend, and then I just deploy it to the Now SSH or hosting provider for the Nextjs, which is now, I think, named Versal. They just made a rebranding recently. And there's one thing I want to show you. It's the survey called State of JavaScript. It comes yearly. I really liked it, and I also read it every year. This is the most fresh one from 2019. And here, if we go to the backend frameworks, we can see the Nextjs here, and it really has good satisfaction and interest rate. It's 91% in 2019. So it means it's a popular, advanced, and a good framework, then it's nice to learn. So I have here the default generated starter template for the Nextjs. It's pretty small, but I advise you to code along with me. So to have this project here, to generate this, we can just go to the documentation here, to the docs, and we can see here a command, which is yarn create next app. If you use npm, you also can go for it, it's no problem, just use npm need next app. Then you need to choose a default starter template. If you do this, you have exactly this project. So let's start. Let's start with some cleanup here. First of all, I advise you to delete the API folder. We don't need this now. And then go to the index.js, select everything, and also remove. Then let's create our first page, and our first page will be the index page. I will use everywhere arrow function components here, so no class-based components, and I also will use hooks in very small use cases. So let's create here the first page with heading hello from Nextjs and some description. Let's make some description. So to see this, what we need to do? We need to start our application. And to start our application, we have in the package.json here the 3 main scripts and 3 dependencies. You don't need to use the starter template. You can also just create an empty npm application, put Nextjs here, React and React DOM, then use the Nextjs with these 3 scripts. The dev script is the most used script for development, of course. It's what we use in 90% of the cases, just to local development. It starts the next in development mode, so it's Nextdev. The build and start, it usually happens on the server. When you build our application, you start for hosting. So to see our page here, what we need to do, we need to make yarn dev. Then it starts on the localhost 3000. Let's open this. Let's also close this one and this. And we should see our page here. So make it a bit bigger. Now we can see our Nextjs page, which is the first page, and it's great. Before we continue, I advise to create first of all the SRC folder, and we put everything in this. So let's stop the server, and I will talk about the main thing and advantage of Nextjs is the routing, which is the page-based routing. It means that if I access the index, it's usually the just default page, which is the index page. But I can create more pages by just creating another page about. And let's first create the about page, which is just simple static page, about page. To see this, it's very easy. I need to start the server. I just need to go to the /about. It means the name of the page is the routing. Just a really cool feature of Nextjs. I just put /about and I'm on the page. You can also make nested routings. To do this, you can create a folder and in the folder another page, and that will be like a nested routing, and I will show it also a bit later. So let's move our pages to the SRC. And also in SRC folder, let's create another folder that is components. Here we will make the components. So for example, I want to build a nav bar, which is shared in every page. And what I advise to do in such case, you can create a component, which will be a nav bar component. And in that nav bar component, we will have something like links. Let's make a UL, and inside UL we have 2 list items. And in every list item we will have I think the A tag with the home, and also another A tag with about page. And here the link will be just home page. Yeah, and now we can use this component, but I want this component to be on every page, so they're shared. The first thing that I can do, I can of course to every page add the navbar here, but there is also one thing from the next that allows you to build the persistent layout on every page. And if you go to the documentation, we can find this as a app, custom app. It looks like this, and this is a wrapper for every page. So as we can see, what we can do here, we can add the global CSS here, we can keep the state when navigating the pages and persist layout between the page. So let's just copy this and create here _app.js. Also export my. What we can do here, let's create the main div, and inside this main div we will have a component, and we also have our navbar here. Oops. Yeah. A bit wrong. That actually should work. And if we see what happens here, let's refresh. Oh, this page cannot be found. I think that because of the moving of the folder, let's just restart and refresh. Yeah, when you move the folder, sometimes you need to restart the server because Nextjs don't understand that the pages were moved. Yeah, as we can see now, we have our component here, which is the Nav Bar Component, and then an About page. And we can go to the Home, and we can go to About, so we can navigate. And if we open the markup, and also let's use the component extension of the React, we can see that this is my app, which is exactly my app here that we created. And the navbar is the reused one, and then we have index. It's this component, which actually the page. If I go to the About, I will see the same structure, but here I will see the About page. So it's a nice thing to make some really shared layouts. It's very good. Okay, that's we understand. But the only thing that we did here wrong is how we navigate between the pages. This is wrong because it's not client-side navigation. It's fully reload of the application, and that's something that we don't want to do. I will show you when I click here on the Home. You will notice that the refresh is coming. So it's the full refresh of the application. Like I'm pressing this, and this is not desired behavior. To fix this, you need to use the link from the next. So I need to import the link from the next, which is next/link. And if I use this component, I just wrap this into my link. And here for the About link, I will do exactly the same. Yeah. Now we can see that it will change the behavior. Okay, this is because I should move href from the anchor to the link component. Now it should be fixed. We can notice now, if I click, we will not see the refresh of the application. It means the navigation now happening on the client side, and the state of application persists, which is the client side look and feel, exactly the behavior that React is doing with React Router. So this is a good replacement for React Router, and I found it very easy and nice to use the link and page-based routing from the Nextjs. Okay. So now let's speak about the server side, which is the most important feature of the Nextjs, how we can make this page to be rendered server side. Actually now it's the static, because Nextjs is using this automatic decision which page to make static, which page to make server-side rendering. And we can see here the sign, it says the page is pre-rendered. And the page is pre-rendered because it has no server-side code. It just has the static page, static HTML, so we can just pre-render this page and never build again. But if we add the special function, which is called get static props, before this function was called get initial props in the previous versions of Nextjs, but the current one gives you the function name of get static props. And what we can do, we can create here the function get static props. It's an async function because here you can just make any async calls on the server side. And here we can return the data as a props. So for example, let's return the value, some value, sorry, you need to return the props and the value of 1. How to read the data? You have it from the props, so here you can get the props and show the value somewhere. Here. Props.value. And you can see the 1 now. Let's refresh. Yeah, and we can see the one now here. And what is very important, that this code always is executed on the server. What does it mean? It means if we can put here something like console log type of window, we should see the log if we refresh. You don't see the log here because it happens on the server side, and we see the log here, which means the type of window is undefined. It means this happens on the server, and that's the one of the main and the best checks if the code is running on client side on the server side. If we, for example, go to the about and then we go to the home, we still don't see anything in the console on the client side because this code is always executed on the server, always. What is also interesting, if we put this console log to the component, and let's remove it from here, you'll see that when I refresh the page, I see that it's happened on the servers, on this client side. But if we go here, I also see that it's happened on the server side also, so it happens both on the server side and on the client side. That's because the Nextjs, after rendering the component first time, it hydrates it, so it moves the state to the client side. And if we go to the about and we go back to the home, we see it's again happened on the client side, but it also happened on the server side. And that's how it actually works. This actually happens also on the server side and the client side, but this function is always executed on the server. But how Next actually injects this to the page? You can find it if we go to the network and, for example, refresh the page. You can see that you downloaded the page, which is our page. It's completely rendered from the server. And if you found here in the response and search for one, maybe the one is not the best thing. Let's put the value some string test, for example, and refresh. And let's find here the test. We see it's in the markup, but if we search once again, we can see that this is also in the page. But where? We can go to the page users and find that here, together with the page, Nextjs is injecting this script, which is just JSON actually, and this JSON is our props. So it means this is available on the client side because it was also passed as this object together with a markup, so our React application can also have this and use it on the client side. Now let's use just an example of some calls. And I advise you to try Chuck Norris joke API, which is the most popular for such cases. But to make a request, let's stop our server and install Nextjs for making HTTP calls. Yeah, while this is happening, so this is the endpoint. We can copy this and try into the browser. It gives us every time the random joke here in the value or a random quote. So let's use this. Go to our project and let's make this call on the on the server side. So on the get static props. Let's make this call. We'll use Nextjs for this and make the joke call. Then here, let's use the joke data that value. So we get just the joke, just a string. Let's start the server again with yarn dev. So now here we will have the value from the server side. Let's see. Yeah, Nextjs is not defined. It's because I just forgot to add Nextjs. Let's bring it here very fast. Okay, it should fix the issue. Yeah, so here we see the random joke. And if I refresh, every time I make a request to the server, every time I request the page, this gets static props is executed, and I have the random joke, and this is inserted as a props for this component. So when I refresh, every time I see the new joke. What will happen if I do exactly the same thing, but on the client side? So here, not in the getStatic props function. What I can do here, I will use hooks, because I'm using function components. I will use React hooks for the component need mount and something like that. So I will need two hooks. It's use state hook and use effect. And I will use here the state first of all, use state of choke, set choke, and the initial state is empty string. Then I will use effect, and the effect will be get joke, a function that we will implement a bit earlier. So I don't need any cleanup, and if you have here an empty array, it means it's the replacement of the component did mount. So it will be executed after the component is loaded. The last thing we need to implement the get joke function, which is the async function. Sorry. And let's copy this code, because we'll do exactly the same thing to compare how it behaves on the client side and on the backend. And then we make set joke here. The res data dot value. Then we have here this joke as soon as component is loaded. And let's also display it before as the value from client side rendering. Yeah. From the joke. Now we can compare the difference. Now we have two jokes. It should be different actually. Let's refresh. Let's also clean this. Yeah, we have two different jokes. One from the client side and another from the server side. And now we'll refresh the page and you'll see the difference between them, because this comes exactly with the page. It will be instantly here, but here it will take like 1 second to make the request, because this happens after the page is loaded already. And you'll see here that this has a blinking effect because it happens on the client side. Yeah, you see the delay. This is because it happens after the component get loaded. And this is the big difference between get static props and making the request on the client side. What also is different, that you will not see the request in the network. If you do here choke, you see this is a request from client side and response. So if you make some security request, like you have a token, in the future we'll have a token for the GitHub API, it's really secure to put it on the clients on the server side, because we will not see the request here, so we will not see the token. It happens on the server, so no one can steal our token. So I think for now that's all. In the next series, we will continue building our application that I showed you, and in the next part, we will integrate the GitHub API and we'll start searching for some repos. So thank you very much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed. So please also have a like and subscribe, of course, and continue watching.